let's have a look at this. As I said, I know we've talked ferry for a long while, but I'll just be honest with you. We are going to try and make this anchor around National's neck as heavy as possible, because they have fucked a generation of travellers between the North and South Island, and we cannot let them remember it. At the same time, they're spending $33 billion on fixing potholes. But of course, remember, roads of national significance, roads of national importance don't include the quote-unquote road between the North Island and the South Island. That can only be either a bridge, a tunnel, or ferries. Doesn't include that road. It only includes the ones that they can put their mates' big trucks on to move product around the country. So we're not going to move away from this, and we're not going to let up on this, because this, as I said last night, I hope there is a naming competition for when these eventual new ferries, the secondhand Corollas, turn up. And my vote is going to be for the SS Baldy-Lux. Just so every time you are on that little boat going across the strait, throwing up because it's doing this, you remember who put you on it, as opposed to the Labour Party, who are going to put you on something that would have just cruised through those waves. That's my thoughts. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a bit ranty. Huh? It's not a way to introduce a guest. So joining us to have a bit of a chat about this is Tangi Utikere, who is a Labour Party MP. He's currently the opposition spokesperson for Transport, Oceans and Fisheries, Racing, Winston must love you, and Associate Education Pacific, as well as Labour's Chief Whip. Tangi, welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, tēnā kōrua, boys. Great to be with you tonight.
Yeah, hopefully we haven't scared you off by getting a little bit too kind of grumpy before we even start. We're not grumpy with you, though, so you're safe.
Not at all.
You're safe. Okay, so what we really are keen to do, and I connected with the Labour Party today, and I talked about Barbie Edmonds maybe coming on and having a talk about this, because Barbie Edmonds seems to be someone who's quite public about the ferries, and she brought up the conversation in the House where she got Nicole Willis to admit that even with the ferries that National's looking at, they're still going to have to rebuild the wharfs. So it's still going to cost a shit ton of money, which they said they didn't want to spend. And I had this little thought last night in this little stream of consciousness show that we have, that I went, now, National keeps talking about the $3 billion blowout, but actually, it's not going to be a $3 billion blowout, because there's going to be an amount that was set aside at the start, and then that's going to have grown a bit, and then that's going to have grown a bit, and then that's going to have grown a bit to $3 billion. So let's say the original quote was 1.5 billion, then it would only be a $1.5 billion quote unquote blowout if we're using their narrative. So I wanted to get to the bottom of this, and I did a bit of looking around in the last 24 hours. And Tangi, I found this article, which we did share last night, but because it was a bit of a stream of consciousness, I didn't quite have the time to take it all in. This is from beehive.govt.nz, straight from the Beehive. And if you go through that, this is the time frame regarding Inter-Islander Ferry Replacement Project, Project IREX. Now, I won't highlight them, but I've been through it to have a look at some of the salient numbers. So in 2018, November of 2018, the investigation for Project IREX said it would cost about $775 billion, pardon me, for the ferries, only for the ferries, right? And then in November of 2019, so a year later, they estimated it just under $1.4 billion for the total project. So I'm assuming that's including anything they needed to do to the wharves. Then we wait for a couple of years. So we're at 1.389 billion in November of 2019. June of 2021, the estimation was 1.45 billion. And then the one that I find most interesting is this one here, February of 2023. The estimation was 2.6 billion. Now that number there, 2.6 billion, was February of 2023. So you got February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. So that's 8 months before the election. So 8 months before the election, the National Party knew, according to this, I'm assuming, unless they can't read, that the estimation was going to be $2.6 billion. They never said anything pre-election like, okay, it's been set for 2.6 billion. If it gets to 2.601 billion, we're going to cancel it. They never said anything like that. One can only therefore assume that they were okay with 2.6 billion, because that was 8 months before they got into power. And then they get into power, and then in November, November of 2023, so just after they get into power, the estimation went to 3 billion. So that's $400 million more than November of that year. And then in December of 2023, they cancelled the project. Now, I'm sure I've oversimplified this, Tangi. I'm sure I've got some of this wrong, because it seems ridiculous that a government would cancel the Ferraris, as they call it, over $400 million out of $3 billion. But because I'm a moron and I don't know how this whole political game works, that's what it looks like to me. It looks like they knew it was at 2.6 billion. They never said anything. And then when it got to 3 billion, they went too much, $3 billion overrun, $3 billion overrun, when actually the difference between pre-election, when it was going ahead, and then cancelling it is only $400 million. I think I finished my 9-minute sermon. I'd just like to throw it to you and go, what have I got wrong? And what are we seeing with those numbers?
Yeah, hey, thanks. And thank you for not letting up on this, because it is an absolute shambles
Yep.
that National have got us into. And let's be honest and frank about this. We don't have any solution on the table that we're hearing from them at the moment either. You know, every day we wake up
and we still
where
don't know.
are the
We still don't
ferries?
know what the break fee is going to be. The break fee could be $1
Yeah,
billion. We still haven't been told.
it could. And, you know, the blowout as a result of the stupid decision that they took in December, you know, we're nearly 9 months since that decision, is going to be catastrophic in terms of timing. That is what the blowout's going to be.
Yeah.
Hey, that sheet that you put up there, that shows that information. I mean, Nicole Willis says, well, I didn't know about the 2.6 billion until negotiations. The reality is this, and this is really important, is that when that figure first arrived, there was a lot of pushback from Labor ministers in the government saying that's not good enough. You need to go away. You need to rethink. You need to come up with other options. And so what we have is Nicola Willis and the National Party basically banding around a figure. They talk about more than $3 billion. No, that was not ever in front of Labor ministers making that decision. And the key thing also is that at the time of post-election, so when the election result came through, the government had to basically, the acting government at that time, had to preserve a number of options. It was over to the new government to make the calls. In the end, they decided to pull the can on that, and we're still waiting. So what I think is really disappointing here is that the government are just banding around a whole range of figures to basically try and run people scared that they've made the right decision, but they have not come up with a replacement.
You say that Nicola Willis says she wasn't aware of that. Now, I mean, I struggle to understand that because, you know, with like a degree in English, I mean, it may not give you the qualifications to be a finance minister, but it should certainly give you the qualifications to read a document. And we're being told that this government is the government of business, but it sounds like what you're saying to me is they didn't do their due diligence on this. One would think that's a fairly simple business practice. So how can she come out and say, well, I never saw that? Seems like that's a bit of a red herring to me.
It is very simplistic. What is also simplistic, though, is the finance minister basically making this call clearly without all the information in front of her in December. And
Yeah.
just this week, we've learnt, you know, like there were documents released that said to the current government, to the cabinet, that cancelling the deal of 551 million for 2 ships would lead to the potential diplomatic issues, and you know, the ability for us to save face might be quite difficult. We've learnt this week that they basically informed the South Koreans less than 1 hour before she publicly made that announcement. And how did she actually inform them?
By
By 2
text.
text messages.
Yeah.
Now
And
that is
actually,
that is
they
not due
actually
diligence at all.
technically they didn't actually inform them before, because it was very clear from the ambassador sent a text and said, "Can I call you?" And they said 26 minutes later sent another text, which was 26 minutes before the announcement. There's no evidence that those texts were received by the people. So just because they
That's
sent
right.
them, they may not have known before the announcement was made. Here's a question for you, Tangi, and it was a question from one of our punters, maybe last night, Chewy. Um, is there any way, this is probably completely not the done thing, but is there any kind of back channel that Labor can be talking to these guys going, guys, just give us 2 years, we'll get ourselves back in and we'll sign it back up again? Or is that just gone burger, reputation ruined, there's nothing we can do about it?
Well, I think there is something we can do. And, you know, Chris Hipkins has been calling on the current government to actually uh, re-enter those negotiations to continue the work that had already been started with the build of these 2 ships. What's really disappointing is we've got Luxon over in South Korea. he talks about himself being a businessman and upskilling himself and all those sorts of things. Well, if he's so good, why can't he go and have a conversation about, hey guys, look, I'm sorry, we got it wrong. Let's go back and renegotiate that deal. Let's build the ships that were already on offer. But of course, Nicola Willis doesn't want him to do that because she's already called the shots.
Yeah.
So it's what we can do is continue to highlight the fact that this is a dodgy, bad decision that they have made. And I'm really also surprised that Winston Peters, who is a big fan of rail, these replacement ferries need to be rail enabled. Barbara Edmonds, I know she, is keen on this as well. Her and I were on the Inter-Island on Friday last week. We were at the ports in Marlborough, visiting, looking at what has been done, talking with the mayor, talking with the harbour master, talking with the crew, right down from the bows, the bottom of the ship, right through to the top on the bridge. These are hardworking folk. Now, this is a government that said, "Oh well, we'll just push out the maintenance by another 5 years." I've asked Simeon Brown, "Is there money in the budget?" "Oh, don't worry about that," he says. This is a government that is just completely removed from reality. And we cannot have the current fleet basically pushed out by another 5 years, and we're still waiting for new ferries to arrive.
I have to say, I'm getting married in January.
Oh, congratulations.
I think is it January? Yeah, I think it's January. And for our honeymoon, we're thinking about doing a complete traverse of the whole of the country, north to south, south to north. And so we've been looking at the ferries, and because of the problems with the current ferries, I'm now going to probably have to spend an extra $80 to $100 each way to make sure I get the tickets that is refundable, because I think it's like $420 for a refundable ticket, or the cheapest one is $327. And I'm going to choose to pay the more expensive amount because we can't trust these ferries. Now, I know, don't get me wrong, I know that the new ferries wouldn't have been here yet, and I probably still would have had to have done that. But not that the new ferries are here, not yet. But the conversation I'm having, people will have to do that for maybe now the next 5 years rather than the next 18 months. And that's part of the problem. Chewy, jump in, mate. What do you want to throw around on this?
Well, I mean, you bring up the disruption from the passenger side of things. There's been little mention of the freight side of things. Every consumer item that needs to move from north to south and south to north has to go over those ferries. They have to be reliable. And at the moment, it's kind of like this bodged thing of like some of the ferries will take rail freight without, even coming off the wagons. Some of them need to be double-handed onto little trucks and all of this sort of stuff. And that seems to be good enough for Nicola Willis, that there's that inefficiency there. And I think this is what I noticed on those IREX, the IREX project, is this seemed to be a project that was really well considered from ground up from a future-proofing point of view. Like, these ships were much, much bigger, much more capable, much more environmentally friendly, and that years of consideration had gone into them. And then in the space of weeks, gone, nothing to replace them, no better ideas. This has to be what sinks this government more than anything else, is that they want to hold up their credentials as an infrastructure and business-focused government. And they've just failed on that, and then followed it up with an absolute failure of diplomacy with one of, I think it's our sixth biggest trading partner. Like, for our Prime Minister to go out there and potentially mend bridges, and instead basically name drop that Squid Game was great, is an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment. I don't want Labour or any of the other opposition parties to take their foot off the coalition government's throat over this at any stage.
Yeah. Because this seems to be the exact example. Like, this is if there was a dictionary definition of how is National going, this would be the picture or the imagery beside it to kind of look over the whole year. If you had just one imagery for what's happening this year with National, it would be the ferries. And that's why we got to keep it in the front of the public mind, because it's this. There are lots of other things, but we're going to just keep making sure you remember this, New Zealand.
Absolutely. And, anyone you talk to, anyone I talk to about the ferries, they just cannot believe that this is a government that has made that stupid decision without having an alternative plan. Now, okay, if they made the decision and they said, hey guys, by the way, here is the plan that we're going to roll out, all right, we'd might probably have a look at that. But the
Yeah,
reality is they've said, see you later, cancel the plans. By the way, we're going to continue to run the existing fleet. And Pat, you talk about, your holiday options there. There is going to be more disruption because there is going to need to be an increase in maintenance. Everyone
yeah,
accepts that. If these ships were coming to the end of their natural life, now pushing them out by another 5 years means they're going to have to go to the dry dock in Singapore. They're going to have to be out of circulation. Timetables are going to have to change. There are going to be issues that just crop up as they do with maintenance as things age. The disruption to freight, as Chewy has said, is a really big deal. Nicola Willis, others, Simeon Brown, think that, you can, roll on, double handle, move off. It is going to add an extra $150 to $200 to every container that is going to be put onto the ferry that is
mm,
not rail enabled. Now, this is from a government that says that they're into it for business. Well, how does that work out when it hits your
yeah,
bottom line? It is just dumb.
yeah. And as you've said, and as we all know, without the solution, they came out with their talking points of secondhand Corolla. For a nice secondhand Corolla, don't need the Ferrari. And then they got told there's no such boat in the world that is secondhand that would do it. And then they started looking at the other series, which are smaller ferries but brand new. And then we find out they have to actually build wharves for those ferries anyway. And Tangi, I'm concerned about this, yeah, because there's no way. Let's just say the cancelling of the last contracts all up is going to cost them $1 billion, and that's very plausible. That means they have to basically spend only $1.5 billion, because that would then be $2.5 billion total, to come in under $3 billion. They're not going to be able to do it. So we are going to end up with a lesser product, the quote unquote second-hand Corolla, won't be second-hand, but we'll be paying for the Ferrari. And it's just I just don't understand. I mean, Chewy uses the phrase often, these economic vandals, what they're doing, what they're allowed to do. And we talk about the idea of how do we make this a one-term government, and it's a very unlikely scenario statistically, but these guys are giving us as much chance as any to maybe see a one-term government. That's what we think, at least.
They absolutely are. I mean, the prices that will result as a result of the decision that they've taken are just going to skyrocket. This is going to be more than $3 billion. We have no idea how much the break clause is going to be. It could be $500 million, could be $1 billion. Who knows? And they're pretty silent on that, by the way. Then you've got the cost of the actual new ships to build them. And bearing in mind that 551 million locked in was a pretty good deal at the
Yeah.
time. So the price there is going to skyrocket. Then you've got the ongoing costs. If you think about maintenance, it's been bandied around $68 million a year in maintenance costs for the current fleet. Now, people haven't been talking about that in this equation. So it continues to increase, and let alone the reputation. I mean, if you do business with someone who is going to do the dirty and cancel a contract on what was a good deal, you think twice about going back and doing business with them. So the reputation stuff there is a real risk, and it's something the government's not taking seriously.
Yeah, and this is the concern I was going to mention a second ago, is that because they're not going to be able to get it under $3 billion, what are they going to hide? What are they going to try and push off to the private sector? Like, I understand when Barbara Edmonds finally got out of Nicola Willis that they're going to have to upgrade the wharves for the ferries they're looking at. Nicola Willis said, correct me if I'm wrong, yeah, but we won't be paying for them. Excuse me? So they're already going to at least partly privatize the building of them. So that basically means now for them to quote unquote save face, they're going to have to play the shell game like they've never played it before. And again, it'll either mean we get crap quality, we get lied to, or all of a sudden we have, Nicola Willis said it this week, we have no intentions this term for asset sales, or we're going to lose as a country. That's my concern. Yeah, that they're going to basically make bad decisions for the country to save their own personal face. That's my concern. Rather than being fucking grown-ups and going, we made a mistake, mea culpa, let's fix it now. They're not going to do that. They're going to make bad decisions so they don't look like the bunch of twats that they really are. I'm sorry,
And they have had.
that might be political terminology not used to, Tangi, but that's what we do around here.
It's all good. I'm from Palmy. We're used to a lot of terminology around here. I give you that. But you know, the key thing there is that they have had plenty of opportunities to say mea culpa. You know, we got
Yeah.
it wrong, but
Yeah.
they are so pig-headed that they are just not going to do that.
100.
And this is going to, you know, it is going to cost people. It is going to cost business. It's going to cost families that want to travel along the Inter-Islander or on the Inter-Islander. But you're also right about the portside development. Nicole Willis did eventually concede to Barbara Edmonds that how much is the government going to put into portside development, landside development? Zilch, zero. And what does that mean? Well, it means privatisation. It
Yep.
means, you know, that's the only way. If the government is saying we're not going to put any money into it, but there's going to have to be upgrades, well, who's going to pay for that? And then what does that mean for councils and others, you know, Wellington or Marlborough Council on both sides of the strait as well? It is just shambolic and not well thought through nor executed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When we
we
get to the end of
often-
these conversations, I was going to say, Drew, when we get to the end of these conversations, I tend to shut up, and then Chewy tends to wrap up in a beautiful package and makes all the professional sense in the world. So I'll just throw it to you, Chewy, and get myself a drink.
I didn't even need to throw. One of the things that I think we've covered just the economic bad news of this, the diplomacy fail, the lack of long-term vision. And I think that lack of long-term vision is really going to hurt them in a particular way, is that this is a political hot potato that is not going to go away, because the moment one of these old ferries goes down, it's going to link back to Nicole Willis.
Yeah.
It's going to link back to Luxon. And so they'll be sitting there going, fuck, I hope the maintenance schedules are enough to keep up. Because if one of these ferries goes down anytime in the next 2 years, that's it. Nobody's going to shut up about it. There is a direct line between a broken ferry, or even worse, a ferry dead in the water in the middle of the strait full of people, and Nicole Willis. And that's just bad, stupid politics.
Yeah.
It is. These current ferries, which, let's be frank, are very shortly going to be beyond their... Well, it's interesting because they suddenly came up with a new report this year when they needed these ferries to run a little bit longer. Say, oh, actually, they've got another 5 years in them. Well, this fleet are running on Christopher Luxon and Nicole Willis's watch. And whatever happens over the next 5 years that they are running, whether it's, you know, maintenance schedules or issues, is on them, because we had an alternative in place and it was coming, and it was coming pretty soon. And, you know, I listened to, who was it? Oh, Matt Ducey, who's Associate Transport Minister, says, oh, a decision on the ferry replacement is imminent. That's his word, it's imminent. And then we heard Nicole Willis say, oh, well, a decision should be out by the end of this quarter, which is the end of September. And now Goldsmith, you know, recently is saying, well, basically, I'm not able to confirm that a decision will be anytime this year. So they themselves don't actually know what they're doing. And it is just an absolute shocker. It really is.
At the next election, Tangi, and I'm sure me and Chewy are happy to help with this, all Labor needs to remember is to put this back onto National, because gently I'll say, at the last election, when National sold the lie about the 15-year-olds' performance in secondary schools, we didn't have much of a pushback from many in Labor saying, yeah, that's because they brought in national standards and we all told them it would happen when it did, and it did. So they were smart enough to be able to palm off those 15-year-olds results to Labor when actually they should have owned it themselves. So I guess what I'm saying from a supporters side, from that side of the spectrum, is we got to make sure that you guys and us in the media leave this decision with them. If there is a death and a breakdown or whatever in the middle of your next term, which happens to be in 4 years, and they start going on and on about under Labor's watch, we just have to make sure they continue to own it. Hey, look, thanks for popping your cherry and being with us tonight. First timer. Very good to be with you. Before you go, and because we haven't got anyone. Oh, very good. We haven't got anyone to talk about the new Māori monarch and stuff. Do you want to say anything to Naru Wahia and the Tūranga Waiwai's, the events over there over the week. You're welcome to share any thoughts if you want.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to acknowledge the passing of Kingi Tuheitia, who was someone who was really focused on kotahitanga unity and acknowledged the new Māori Queen. And just looking at some of the coverage today, the heartfelt sort of sentiment that those up there were expressing towards the new Queen, I think does actually bode really well for the future. A continuation of the former King's focus on bringing people together, which in the current environment is not easy, in terms of some of the decisions and rhetoric that's coming out under the current government. But I do want to acknowledge that the mantle has passed to the new it's from the King to the new Queen, and we all, look forward to the unity that no doubt she will bring with her leadership.
Yeah, I'm freaking excited that a 27-year-old's in there. That probably means, and hopefully that, all things being equal, there's a 50-year reign coming up, which I think will do nothing but help the Kingitanga movement, especially, moving forward and bringing a continuity in. It's exciting. It's really exciting.
Totally.
Hey, thanks for joining us tonight, man. Anything else to wrap up the show? You want to mention anything?
Oh, I just think the announcement of the new Māori Queen just ties into something we've mentioned on the show a couple of times of a real high watermark of young Māori leaders that are coming through. I think it's absolutely perfect and appropriate that it is a young wahine that is picking up the mantle.
Yeah.
It was a good vibe just reading about it.
Yeah, very cool. Hey, Tangi, thanks for joining us tonight, man. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Chewy. Go well, boys.
All right.
No worries.
All the best.